Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a 60-year saga of conquest. This is the story of how the massive British Empire just systematically dismantled and absorbed the independent and, frankly, very powerful kingdom of Burma. It's a clash that was driven by ambition, fueled by economics, and played out like some kind of high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. But look, before we even get to the British, you've really got to understand who they were up against. For more than 130 years, Burma was ruled by the Konbaun dynasty. And let me tell you, founded by the formidable Along Paya, this was no declining power. Not at all. It was a dynamic, expansionist empire that had unified and modernized the country. All right, so to really get our heads around this, we're going to break the story down into 5 key stages. We'll start with how these two empires first collided. Then we'll walk through the 3 distinct wars, and finally, we'll look at Burma's long, hard-fought road back to freedom. Okay, so let's dive right in. Our story really kicks off with these 2 massive, powerful forces just expanding right towards each other across the map. A collision was pretty much inevitable. So on one side, you've got the Konbaun dynasty, and they are always looking to expand. You have rulers like King Bodapaya, who were super aggressive, conquering coastal regions and forging a powerful modern Burma. And that expansion, it was pushing directly west. You guessed it, right towards British interests. And then, of course, on the other side, you've got the British East India Company. As they were busy cementing their huge power base in India, their focus naturally started to shift. They were looking to secure their frontiers and, explore new commercial opportunities to the east. Right, so the real flashpoint came in 1822, when Burma conquered Assam. All of a sudden, their territories slammed right up against British India. You had this ill-defined border and 2 incredibly ambitious empires. Now they're direct neighbors. This just turned a simmering rivalry into a full-blown source of conflict. And, well, you know what happens next. Inevitably, these escalating border clashes just exploded into the First Anglo-Burmese War. And this thing was brutal. It was incredibly expensive, and it would permanently alter the balance of power in the whole region. So, okay, both sides are on a high alert. Tensions are through the roof. What was the one thing, the specific incident, that finally tipped the scales from just border skirmishes into all-out war? Well, the war officially kicked off in 1824, with Governor General Amherst in charge. The direct cause? It was the Burmese capture of an island near Chittagong, which, by the way, was East India Company territory. For the British, that was it. That was a step way too far. And the British response was decisive. Instead of getting bogged down in nasty jungle warfare on the border, they did something completely different. They launched a massive amphibious assault, landing 10,000 troops right in Rangoon. This naval strategy just completely caught the Burmese off guard, and it allowed British forces to push deep into the country. So after 2 long years of really bloody fighting, the Burmese were forced to sue for peace. The war finally ended with the Treaty of Yandabo, and you need to remember that name, because this single document would effectively cripple the Burmese Empire for decades to come. And the consequences for Burma were just devastating. They were forced to give up huge chunks of territory, including their entire western coastline. They had to renounce all their claims on Assam, which basically gave the British a nice big buffer zone. And oh yeah, they had to pay. And the amount was staggering, £1 million sterling. To put that in perspective, this was an absolutely enormous sum back then. Paying it left Burma politically weak and just financially ruined. It was a totally humiliating blow. So the peace, it actually held for about 25 years. But the next conflict, it wasn't going to be about border security. Nope. This one was almost entirely about business, about resources, and the British hunger for new markets. This time around, the man in charge of British India was Lord Dalhousie, and this guy was a notorious expansionist. His motivations were crystal clear. He looked at Burma and saw its valuable timber, and he saw its people as a huge untapped market just waiting for British goods. And this really captures the gap between the excuse and the reality, right? The official reason for the war was this tiny dispute over 2 British sea captains getting fined. A tiny fine. But the real driver? It was a cold, calculated move to seize control of Burma's rich resources. It was all about the money. The war itself was over in a flash. The British quickly captured the province of Pegu, what was also known as Lower Burma. And this victory was strategically massive. It gave Britain control over all, and I mean all, of Burma's maritime trade, effectively strangling the independent kingdom. It was now completely cut off from the sea.
And this brings us to the final act. With Burma now landlocked and seriously weakened, Britain moved in to erase what little was left of its independence from the map, completely.
So by 1885, under a new guy, Lord Dufferin, the main motivation shifted again. This time, it wasn't just about profit. It was about the great game of empire, that huge rivalry. Specifically, it was a growing fear of Britain's chief rival, France, getting a foothold in the region.
See, the new Burmese king, Thibaw, he started to build commercial ties with France. And the British, they panicked. They were terrified that a French-Burmese alliance could threaten their whole position in the region. So they used a trade dispute, this time involving a Scottish timber company, as the perfect excuse they needed to issue an ultimatum, and when it wasn't met, to invade.
The final resistance, well, it was brief. King Thibaw surrendered in November of 1885, and then on January 1st, 1886, it was official. The Khanbaum dynasty was over, and the independent kingdom of Burma was just wiped from the map, absorbed as just another province of British India. Just like that. But, the story doesn't end there with annexation. You can't just erase a country and its people that easily. A whole new chapter of resistance, of nationalism, and of struggle was just beginning. After the annexation, it took over 60 more years of determined nationalist struggle for Burma to finally regain its sovereignty. A new generation of leaders, like the famous Aung San, they emerged. And after boycotts, a ton of organizing, and all the turmoil of World War II, Burma finally won its independence in 1948. So, this whole history, this story spanning well over a century, it really leaves us with a critical question that still echoes today. What are the deep, lasting legacies when one empire systematically dismantles another? I mean, how does a nation recover not just its land, but its very identity? That's a legacy worth thinking about.